balance from time to time, and I may coach some people in that. So thank you again for inviting me. Let's start with a polling question that's a little bit more social. Pat, can you launch the polling question?
Sure.
And I see, I'm not seeing a little
Anybody
check.
click on the poll?
Can people click on the
can.
poll? Okay, very good.
There we go.
Okay, looks like we got
24, 24 to 27. Got a couple more. 25.
okay, we're ready to end and see those results. Looks like sharing the results, it looks like I can conclude as a expert observer, this group likes to eat. 4th of July is one of those great holidays where we can enjoy that community time, enjoy that food time. And I will admit that I enjoyed some quiet time as well. So I appreciate quick answers to the polling questions. And I'm glad everybody had a great time during our recent holiday.
And,
Okay,
and Richard, somebody said you forgot to plug in here family time.
oh, very good. Very good. Thank you. Yeah, Pat, we'll call out that family time. Pat, can I share the news? Pat's a recent grandmother, so she's very happy.
Or soon to be. So, yeah.
Okay, so let's take a quick look at our agenda for today. And I'm going to start with some quotes from some of the people who have written the books on coaching. Go do a little bit of a deeper introduction on myself and ask Pat to do hers. We're going to take a look at some coaching resources. I'm going to ask a question about what are those common skills that you might want to develop. We're going to look at this thing called the GROW coaching model. We're going to practice, and I'm going to add some lessons learned. The thing I really want to emphasize is I have a tendency toward the practical. So my goal is, my hope is that we can each walk away from this with 1 or 2 slides, 1 or 2 questions, one or two tools that combine the theory, the academic research with how somebody actually gets better as a team member, as a formal leader in the organization. So these are 3 very famous coaches, internationally renowned, who have written wonderful books. John Whitmore, Sally Helgeson, Marshall Goldsmith. I'd like to just pause, have everybody read those quotes, and if I can get a couple volunteers, tell me what words or phrases stand out to you in those quotes.
And while you're reading those quotes and thinking about that, I do have the gallery view, but I've got the slides up as well. So I'm scrolling through. So you can unmute yourself and just speak up, or if you want to raise your hand, you could do that too. But I would suggest just jumping in.
I was just going to say real quick, what kind of stands out to me is helping them to learn rather than teaching them. I think that's kind of interesting to say that, because a lot of you're trying to teach them how to learn, I guess, in some ways, but that's kind of, I just want to mention that stands out to me.
Yeah, very good. Very good. I love that comment, helping to learn rather than teaching. And Granville, I will owe you $1. That's going to be a great segue to a slide coming up.
What I notice about all of them is all of them require a, excuse me, a willingness to change. And change is actually in one of the quotes as well.
Very good. And I think, Joyce, you shared that change management has been one of the topics, and it's all about moving from current state to future state. Coaching, development, coaching for performance is all about that as well.
And similarly, I really like the what got you here won't get you there, similar around the change mechanism that, you know, we are in an ever evolving industry, economic climate that without the nimbleness and flexibility to adjust to those conditions, we're just going to be static.
Yeah, thank you, Jen. And I can't imagine that there's any regulatory, environmental, interest rate, investment changes that are affecting Ohio Capital right now.
None, no.
Thank you. Okay, so I always like to start with those quotes because those words can be impactful. And I think everybody's hit on exactly what I would say as well. Change is important, growth is important, and those commitments, we're not going to stay steady state. We got to keep moving forward. So the deeper, richer introduction, just to build some credibility and maybe add some silliness, I did spend 25 years in corporate human resources, organizational roles. I've been the owner of my own business. But on the most important side for me, Joan and I have been together for 45 years. So you'll see the picture of us on an Alaska cruise. For my 60th birthday, we went to Las Vegas and renewed our wedding vows in the Viva Las Vegas Wedding Chapel. Everybody picks Elvis, so we picked Liberace. And we are the owner of, or the mommy and daddy, I guess, to the two laziest cats in the world. The other thing that I'll point out, if you're looking for a person who can help you get better as a team member or a leader in an organization, I'm pretty good at that. If you're looking for somebody to help you keep your hair or to become 6'3", you might want to find somebody else. On the deeper side of the coaching that I've done for organizations, I have coached 170 individuals in one-on-one coaching engagements. I've been part of assessment centers, leadership academies. Pat and I actually worked together the last 3 years to put together a corporate university for a local client to help leaders get better. And as we go through these slides, the thing that I want to reinforce is there are things that work and things that don't work as you try to get better as an individual team member, as a leader in an organization. And we're going to base all of the work that we're talking about today on things that really work if you're willing to do the work. The other thing I'm proud of is the diversity of my clients and coaching engagements. I mentioned this to Joyce last week, and I'm kind of proud that I'm a coach sitting in Central Ohio, and 40% of my individual coaching engagements have been with women. 20% have been born outside the US, 20% have been minority, and 5% have been LGBTQ. I make that point not necessarily to brag, but to reinforce that we are all working in a global, diverse economy. I'm sitting here in Columbus, Ohio. Most of my clients have been in the Ohio Midwest area. We are in a diverse global world. I'm kind of proud of that people pick to work with me, and I enjoy that work as well. Pat, I'm going to let you do a intro on your deeper background.
So I'll just jump in and say that I've been around probably as long as Richard, 30 plus years in corporate America. Went out on my own about 5 years ago. My sweet spot in the talent space is around team performance, team coaching, leadership development, change leadership, and a lot of culture transformation. And so I just love that work, and I'm happy to be with you guys. And you can see the rest of my stuff on the screen.
So I was joking with Pat earlier. I've got the lazy cats and she's got the crazy Labradors. The resources and guidebooks, I'm going to point out, I know Tony is a reader. I was teasing him about that earlier. I think when he and I had a chance to work together, whenever I mentioned a book, he read it cover to cover. And usually had more questions for me the next meeting. But the foundational book we're going to be talking about today is Coaching for Performance by Sir John Whitmore. And John Whitmore was an English tennis coach who then became an organizational leadership coach. And this book is the foundational book. And the whole premise of this book is great coaches ask great questions. They don't necessarily have to have the answers. The example that is often cited in that book is when John Whitmore was a tennis coach, he would say, most coaches say, keep your eye on the ball. The better coach will say, when the big left-hander is hitting the serve, which way are the seams spinning? You can't answer that question if you're not keeping your eye on the ball. So we're going to go through a lot of questions today that Pat and I have found helpful in our leadership coaching work. The other book that is foundational is the book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And as was mentioned earlier, that phrase even resonates with people. We all need to make sure we are managing our stress and being emotionally intelligent whenever we try to gain a new skill. We're changing our lives, changing some behaviors. So being emotionally intelligent is important. And then the other books at the bottom are leadership competency books, a book that talks about the triggers that can change some of our behavior. And Sally Helgeson and Marshall wrote a book called How Women Rise, and the particular comments and issues that many women may face in the workplace. So before I go on, anybody familiar with these books? Any comments you'd like to make? Any other resources that people find helpful?
I would just like to note that 2 of these books are on our Libro learning app already, the Coaching for Performance and the Emotional Intelligence 2.0. The other 4 books are going to be added to the Libro library sometime later this week. So you will all have access to all of them.
And Joyce, I think I have most of those books, not all, but hard copy as well. And they're being contributed towards a library. If you want to actually check out an actual book, we'll find a place for that in the coming weeks. So you can borrow a book if you want to take it out.
Thank you, Tony.
And Tony, you just unmuted yourself, but I need to ask, did I miss any critical one?
I think FYI and Coaching for Performance were the 2 that I found really helpful. The Emotional Intelligence 2.0 has an assessment in it, which is informative. And then there's the Strength Finders. Was that just an assessment, or was there a corresponding book? I can't remember.
It is both, yes.
But I think the Strength Finders is very interesting and helps you clarify your thinking about where your personal strengths lie and how they juxtapose with what you're trying to accomplish in the workplace, and is there alignment there. So that's another one that I would add to the list if it were me.
Good, thank you.
And Richard, if I could add one thing, I think the reason why these books are like the core of our resources is because they're practical. You don't have to start at the beginning of the book. You could pop in the middle or the end or whatever, and they're easy reads. And the other is that you don't have to be a leader of people. You could be a self-leader or a leader of influence, and any one of these resources could be beneficial for you. So I'm glad you're adding them, Joyce, to your portal.
Very good. Did I hear another voice?
Joyce just said thank you.
Okay. So let's launch another polling question. Before Pat does that, I'm going to do a little setup. And when I thought about this webinar, again, we're building toward an exercise that we're going to ask you to do in breakout rooms. I started thinking about, in all the coaching work that I've done, what are those most common skills or competencies that leaders often want to work on, individual contributors want to work on, team members want to work on, and I have landed on these 4. I went back and looked at individual development plans, and emotional intelligence is often high on the list. Am I aware of my own habits and patterns? Do I know that I'm a high I and high D, and occasionally may need to stop talking? Am I aware of the needs of others? Can I manage myself? And can I help mentor others That is all called emotional intelligence. The second one is strategic agility. And when you think about moving through an organization, growing in an organization, we often get hired, especially early in our careers, to do tactical things. We have a technical competence. Developing the ability to think about, as was mentioned earlier, what happens next? What's the future? What's changing? What's the big picture? That's called strategic agility. Managing ambiguity becomes a very key skill as you think about the complexities of today's organizations. I'll lean into the camera and ask a silly question. Has anybody's boss ever told them you have to increase revenues and cut expenses and increase customer service? Those seem to be ambiguous. Those seem to be opposite things. But a key skill is managing that ambiguity. And it's called in improvisation doing both and. Having that skill to figure out, I can do both and. Maybe I can do all three. How would I do all three? And then that last one that becomes a key skill in any organization is influencing other people. So you're not the boss, but you still have to go down the hallway. You still have to get on that team call. You still have to persuade and motivate other people. So I'm going to ask Pat to launch a question. There's a brief definition in the polling question. Which of the following would you most like to improve for your personal development?
There was a second question about choice one, choice two, but it didn't have a title to the question, so.
You can ignore, thank you, Millie. You can ignore question 2, thank you.
Okay, you might have to select something to get
Okay,
past.
thank you. I'll blame that on pilot error, and I was the pilot who set up the polling question. Oh, this is very, very cool. I'm loving the trend of this.
So I don't know if everyone has access. So we have 27 out of 28. Do you want me to go ahead and end the poll, Richard?
Yeah, let's go ahead, Pat. We've got a good framework. So I also want to ask everyone, write down your answer. So I want you to write down what you said you would most like to improve of these 4, and that is going to be one of the basics that we ask in the breakout session in your work group.
I'd be curious as people are writing down if this is a surprise to them to see the trend here, or if it's what you kind of expected.
Yeah, I was going to say, who would like to answer Pat's question? Is this what you would expect based upon what you know about the culture, the leadership training, the organizational development training at Ohio Capitol?
Richard, anything else you want to share about the trend here before we stop sharing?
Yeah, I'm going to go out on the limb here and say that influencing others is also or is one of those top ones, because I know Ohio Capitol has a big emphasis on the outside. Your job is to go outside and sell, market, go get some of those investments. So influencing others doesn't surprise me at all. Any comments about that observation?
Stop sharing.
Anybody unmuting or raising their hand, Pat?
Not that I could see.
Okay, I'll keep going then and make sure that, again, you've written down which one you picked. So thinking about the context of what everyone just picked that they'd like to work on, one of those four, let's move into the GROW model. And GROW stands for goal, reality, options, and will. So when you think about your goal, what do you want to change? What skill might you want to acquire or improve? What change might you want to make? What's your current reality? How do you know if you're good at it or not? What's your self-assessment? Have you received feedback from others? Some organizations are more formal, doing 360s. Some are doing different kinds of rating. Some are just asking, what should I work on in the annual performance review conversation? So after you've established your goal, reality, you create options. What are 2 or 3 ways I could get better at that skill or competency? What are the pros and cons? Which one might be best? And then committing to a plan, taking the actions, practice, 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 and being held accountable. Just like any sport activity, organizational activities require practice, practice, practice to get better. So that's the image, if you will, of the GROW model. Again, largely based on John Whitmore's book, Coaching for Performance. Anyone familiar with the GROW model? Has anyone used it before? I know Tony mentioned it. Anyone else has seen this GROW model or have any comments about it?
Having used it, I can tell you it's a good framework to think about how you approach a situation, and when you're interfacing with folks and trying to serve as a coach, it's a good framework to be thinking about and to utilize.
Yeah.
And Richard, how might somebody, and nobody else is raising their hand at this point or speaking up, how might somebody use this for themselves?
So great question. Thank you, Pat. If I wanted to get better at influencing others, for example, that might be a goal, and many people quoted that. You might want to ask others, how well do you think I'm doing at influencing others? As simple as that. You might ask, what do you think I could do to get better? Create some options. You might want to look for Google influencing and look at some of the research and articles. I know that many people still use the Dale Carnegie book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And then pick 2 or 3 things that is in that research or someone suggests to you that you could commit to trying. Pat, you had another question that you wanted to put the context around the GROW model when you and I were talking earlier today. Remember what that question was?
I'm trying to remember. What was it?
You asked the question, why?
Oh yeah, I think the important thing that's sort of overarching all of this is why, and understanding why something is most important to work on, I think is really the catalyst that will give us the energy, because if we want it bad enough, we could go through these steps and figure out the best way to get it. The other thing I'll mention here too is from a practical standpoint, I often tell people that I work with that there's never a good time to develop ourselves. We're always busy. It's like taking vacation. There's never a good time to take vacation, right? And so when we think about using this framework or this process around developing ourselves to get better at coaching ourselves or others, thinking of what's in front of us and what's in our schedule and how we can integrate this rather than making it an extra kind of thing that's more on our plate when we're busy already, is probably the easiest practical way to use a process that Richard is describing here.
So I'm going to also ask, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to ask if I could make a comment regarding the model, and I think it attests to the need for mentorship or having a coach or a leader guide you. is, and I'll use the analogy of golf. And let's say that, in golf, you want to be able to hit the ball farther. That's great. You can practice all you want. You can look up YouTube videos, but if you're practicing the wrong things, you can go through all these steps, practice the wrong things, and not get any better. And that's where I think a coach comes in, because you can identify your goal. You can identify what you think are the skills you need to acquire, but they may not necessarily be. And you can go through the steps of practicing all those things and still not get to be where you want to be, because you're not going through the right steps. And I think that's where a good coach or mentor comes in to kind of guide you along those steps and say, yeah, you're committing, you're putting the effort in, you're doing what you should be doing, but you're not doing it in necessarily the right way. So I think, just looking at the GROW model individually, I think you could add that step in of the coaching and mentorship as well.
Love it.
Yeah,
I
great,
like
great,
that.
I'm sorry, great comment, buddy. And one of the things I often do is do those 360 interviews to find out the voice of your other stakeholders. What do they think is important? And then use the coaching approach based on some of that data. Thank you. Great comment. I heard another voice.
It was Joyce. What were you going to share?
Yeah, I was just going to piggyback on what Buddy said. In addition to the coach kind of helping you see what you don't see, I think the reality section here, where you get feedback from others, is really important, because just, having coached people myself, been coached myself, we all have our blind spots. So we might think we're, just exceptional at something, and we don't see what we don't see. And so I think that feedback from others is really crucial.
Very good. Okay, very good. So I think I'm going to take those comments as a conviction that I have convinced you the GROW model is the right approach. The other thing I'll say is many of the people I work with take one or two of these slides and keep it in front of them in their workstation, in their office, whatever, and just constantly remind themselves of goal, reality, options, and will is a proven way on how you get better. In addition to the GROW model, which you'll see at the bottom of the slide I'm now showing, Pat and I, in this work we did with a local organization a few years ago, came up with what do we need to add while people are using the GROW model? And we call this the critical triad. And if you think about growing, changing, I mentioned earlier, that causes stress. We need to be emotionally intelligent. Let's add mindset and skills while we are growing. Let's be present. Let me think about, what am I doing right now to get better at the thing I want to get better at? Let me hold the big picture. How will this help me in the future? Let me be critical in my thinking. Joyce and Buddy just mentioned kind of that coaching, getting the feedback. Let me literally be critical of myself and use critical thinking to say, why do I want to get better at this? How am I doing now? What should I do differently? And then those last three on that left side, important to most organizations for culture and values. Let me show up with trust, integrity, authenticity. On the skill side, active listening. Am I pausing to really hear what someone just told me? Can I use powerful questions to get myself moving along? Obviously, I'm going to give a shout out again to Joyce. All of these webinars that she's put together for learning tells me that Ohio Capital, Joyce is a champion of learning. Everyone on this webinar wants to learn today. So you're all championing your own learning and then holding each other accountable for how you get better. So Pat and I call this a critical triad if you can combine the GROW model with mindset and skills. So I think this is going to be the last polling question. Which of the following do you think you're pretty good at now? Might be strongest for you? Mindset, skills, or actually using the GROW model? Okay, are we close? Looks like Pat, looks like we're got all the answers.
Can you see the results?
So this is no surprise to me at all. First off, many of us are starting to understand the GROW model, but the fact that 4 of us know how to use it, have used it, that's certainly encouraging. Skills. I am just thrilled that there's a big percentage there. We're approaching what we're doing today and in our own development with the right mindset, that recognizing how we show up with those personal values and holding our presence, big picture, critical thinking. Any other comments about this triad? This may be new to some people, but again, Pat and I know it's important to have all 3 of these. Any other ways you think you could use this triad in the workplace?
Maybe in a strategic plan.
Sorry, Millie, could you repeat that?
Maybe in a strategic planning kind of situation for the organization.
Oh, tell me more what you're thinking about.
Well, I see big picture, critical thinking, skills, listening, and setting goals. That almost sounds like a strategic plan in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Yeah, I had not made that connection before. I think that's spot on. It is really very good. Thank you.
I could see it used for conflict resolution.
Ooh, but buddy, you know I'm going to say, tell me more.
Well, when you think about mindset and the important part about conflict resolution is coming to terms in agreement, and both of you, or however many parties are involved, need to display trust and integrity and authenticity. So starting off on that foundation and then getting to the point where there's active listening so that you can come to some agreement between the two, asking important questions, trying to figure out where you're coming from each side, and of course being held accountable, and then using the GROW model to actually set goals and figure out where you need to be or where you'd like to be in the future.
Yeah, very good. And again, I hadn't exactly thought of a conflict resolution application as well. You guys are giving me things I'm going to use for my future coaching clients. I may have to hand out a few dollar bills here. Thank you. I'll build on what Buddy just said, that I mentioned the both and concept earlier. And just as Buddy was saying, conflict resolution is about how can we do what you want and what I want? How can you do what you need and what I need, what your team needs and what my team needs? Very good.
I wanted to add that I think this could also be used in, the culture work that we're doing as an organization, being present for it, really showing up, engaging in that critical, the active listening, asking powerful questions of one another, being held accountable, displaying that trust, integrity, and authenticity, and really even creating an action plan from there, using the GROW model.
Good. Thank you, Joyce. Very good. So we've got strategic planning, culture, conflict. You can see how these important concepts, I'm going to say, are universal. They can be applied to many situations, and it's important to think about that triad as you do your work. The other thing Pat mentioned to me earlier, and Pat, I'm just going to go ahead and say these words. You mentioned earlier that the beauty of these things, you can practice all 3 while doing your current work. It doesn't mean you're adding to your workload. You're just being conscious of your mindset, using these skills and the model as you go forward.
Well, and you could also use them to build relationships. You could use them for any project that you're working on, as many of you alluded to. So it's really, like you said, Richard, a universal tool or set of tools.
Okay, very good. So we are building from looking at some coaching quotes, some coaching resources, some models, getting into some of the coaching questions. So before we get into coaching questions in our practice, the last real setup slide I have is the one in front of you. I labeled this "Find a Coach and Be a Coach." And if you read that quote on the right, I'll give you a second to read that. That may be one of those slides I put out on my LinkedIn site. I was thinking about doing this webinar and I thought, I'm going to go ahead and put a Richard Needles quote out there. I may know a few things. That last word in that last sentence, stakeholders, or in that last sentence, stakeholders, I capitalized. We are all stakeholders for each other. The picture on the left is a diagram that again is based on coaching for performance, that coaching is about asking questions that help an individual move themselves toward a solution. It is not lecturing. How many people like to be lectured at? What? Well, here's what I believe. And it may be okay for a college professor, but probably not the right approach for a coach. Criticize, criticize, criticize. We don't like that. Interrogation. Why did you do that? Why did you do that? Why did you do that? Again, the emotional connection, the research shows, is made through a coaching approach with, what have you tried so far? Simple question like that moves you toward a solution. What else do you think you might try? What might work? Those are good coaching questions, not lecturing, criticizing, or interrogating.
Richard, I have a question. I know there's a statistic about, that people tend to take ownership and accountability of an action plan and really drive it forward to reach their goal differently when they're coached versus advised or told. Do you know what the studies are on that? I know there's a percentage that, if people are coached and come up with their own best answer, they're a percentage likely, pretty high percentage more likely to follow through and be accountable to reaching their goal versus being told, told this is what you need to do and how you need to do it.
Yeah, thank you, Joyce. There's actually a diagram in Coaching for Performance that is based on the telling versus coaching, and it's 70%. That people are more likely to improve, get better at the thing that's important to them if you use a coaching approach.
And coach, the difference is really, asking the question and letting them come up with their own best answer versus instructing.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Is that appropriate? Okay. So now we're going to get into some questions that I want people to think about. We're going to have a couple of slides that people can use and keep in front of them. I know this is included in the handout. But as I started doing this coaching work on my own several years ago, I use a personality tool. I know Ohio Capital uses DISC. And if you think about a quadrant-based personality tool that says we have one of 4 dominant patterns, that also leads to questions we should ask ourselves. And this is actually now on the back of my business card. So when I hand my business card to anyone, they can turn it over and this is on the back. I think these questions are so important. A good coach will help an individual decide what's important, what actions are important, who is important to your success, why is that important, and how will you achieve it? So it's very simple: what, who, why, and how. In relating this to DISC, it's not a perfect match, but perhaps the high D is going to focus on the what questions. Perhaps the high I on who, S on why. S's are more social, but they also are often tied to purpose, the purpose of what we're doing. And obviously C's then would relate to the how and the process piece. I believe it's important not to just ask yourself one of these questions, but to ask yourself all 4. If you're engaging someone on your team as your coach, your peer, have them ask you all 4. You're probably going to get a more complete answer. Similar to goal, reality, options, and will, if you ask what, who, why, and how is probably going to be more complete. Now I'm keeping an eye on the clock. I want to make sure we've got time for the breakouts and the close. I think we're doing okay. Any comments about this? Can people see how it might relate to dominant patterns in DISC? I'm also pausing. If you hear me pause, I'm also just glancing at chat questions. So if you are populating the chat, please feel free to do that as well. I'll ask my buddy Pat to keep an eye on that.
I've got a quick question. When you're coaching people, you also need to understand how they actually learn too. I mean, some people are visually, they like to learn by seeing things. People like to learn by doing things. Other folks like written instructions. Or written information, I guess. How does that all fit in something like this?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Granville. I don't use a particular tool which helps me with learning style. I know you may have a tool in your toolkit. The personality tool will often point people in some direction. Granville, when I do a workshop like this, or when I am working an individual coach, I try to give somebody something to read. We have a conversation. I worked with a executive at OCLC who said to me, "Can you just draw me a picture?" And she was challenging me because I tend to think in bullets and columns and rows. And I went back to my next coaching session with her with a picture of a bridge. Oh, you want me to cross the bridge? So to your point, some people are visual, audio learners, or writing with their hands. Great question, Pat. Anything you'd add there?
Granville, the only thing that I would add to what you said is I think it's a preference issue like you suggested. And I think I would just ask them what their preferences are. Just like with DISC, you need to lean into these other styles and make sure that their needs are being met as well. And I would just ask them, because more often than not, they'll tell you. And if they don't know, you could just go through some different scenarios of different options of how they might like to learn, and they might want to pick one and try it and see if it works for them.
Yeah. Granville, have you used anything with some success?
No, I mean, I just basically what Pat mentioned about, usually people will tell you how they learn better. They want to see something visually, or they want to sit down and actually do it themselves. They, like you say, they normally will tell you, but if they don't tell you, then you got to get it out of them somehow. So
yeah, I'm smiling and chuckling a little bit. The group that Pat and I worked with for 2 or 3 years were predominantly engineers, and we literally took boxes of Legos into some of our group exercises and had them physically build things with their hands, and it reinforced the concepts. So, yeah.
Joyce, you had a comment to make too?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that's the beauty of coaching versus telling, though, is because if you're asking the coaching questions like, how do you achieve success, or how will you achieve success, you'll get to that versus like, oh, here's how I think you can achieve success. Here's what you do to get there. Whereas if you're asking them, how do you think you can get there? Or what are the things you might try? I think that gets to the root of, that issue pretty well.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to glance at the clock and keep moving here. This is kind of a scattered approach to some coaching questions. So I offered the what, who, why, and how. Now I'm going to offer just some random questions that might be good coaching questions. Who can take a look at one of these questions and tell me whether it might be a goal, reality, option, or will question?
Well, what outcome you were hoping to achieve, that's clearly in the goal quadrant.
Very good. Thank you, Tony. One more, and then I'll keep moving. What's another question? Where might it fit in?
What have you already done to prepare? Is that will kind of question
Or it might be a reality question of what have you done? What's in kind of that, where are you now kind of thing? Where have you been kind of thing? Yeah, maybe. Good. So what I have done on the next slide is group whole bunch of coaching questions that good coaches typically use into goal, reality, options, and will. So in the GROW model, those 5 questions you see for goal: what would you like to change? What do you really want to accomplish? How will you measure? What's your time frame? Reality, what's happening now? What's worked? What are others saying? That would be feedback. What roadblocks might you need to overcome? Options, I always like to ask the question, what are 3 different ways you could meet your goal? Because if you ask what's the best way, that might limit people's thinking. I'm kind of fond of the number 3. It gets people thinking creatively, opens up their mind. And then that will question, what's your plan of action? How will you check in and adjust? As we're all trying new things, we often see new roadblocks and have to adjust. And who will hold you accountable? So what makes these effective questions? Let me ask that question. What is it about these questions that makes them effective in the GROW model?
Well, I think the first thing that stands out to me is that they're open-ended. They're not just yes, no questions. You actually have to put, they're thought-provoking, and you have to give some insight to them, which I think really facilitates the emphasis of the GROW model. And so it gives deliverables in the responses that people would be looking for.
Very good. And Jen, just like good sales questions, coaching questions, you can often ask customers these questions and they'll give you an answer because they're open-ended. It gets them talking. They're not yes, no questions. Very good.
I think it's also building on what Jen was saying, that you know, they are open-ended and the questions can be used on anyone, but everyone's answers are going to be unique. And so it is to think about their unique perspective and what they're trying to accomplish.
Okay, very good. And I'll just glance at chat here and let's see, I'll save that constructive criticism. Pat, you want to write that one down? We'll talk about that one at the end.
I am. I'm actually texting as we speak. So
Perfect. Thank you. So let me keep going here, and we're doing great on time. So let's discuss this one as a group, and then we'll do our breakout session. So everybody's gotten familiar with the concept, the research of the GROW model, asking good coaching questions. Everybody's got the handout in front of them. Here's the scenario. Maria Estevez has been assigned as the lead for a new project team to implement an enterprise-wide forecasting system. So she's going to be the team lead on the project. She wants to improve her leadership skills. I'd like to get 4 volunteers. Somebody tell me what would be a good goal question to ask Maria. Then we'll ask for a reality question, an options question, and a will question.
and I always say reading isn't cheating. So if you want to go back to the previous slide with all the questions or go to another slide, there's some good stuff back there that you could pull forward into this exercise.
Or if Ohio Capital has been working on a forecasting system and you know the exact question, please feel free.
I would ask, sorry.
Tamara?
I would ask what she really wants to accomplish.
Very good. So what is leadership to her? Yeah, what do you really want to accomplish? Thank you. How about a reality question?
I'd ask what roadblocks are present.
Ah, very good. And Marcus, thank you. And that could be very good, especially for a new team. You may not know how to do this before. Very good. Roadblocks. Perfect. Thank you. How about an options question?
I think that if implementing an enterprise-wide forecasting system is going to require and necessitate stakeholder buy-in. So making sure that which stakeholders are going to be most affected by this, and is there a way to utilize their input in framing the outcome?
Very good. So going back to that who question, who's important, and how will you utilize their feedback? Kind of maybe a couple of questions that would help create those options, or have her create those options. Thank you, Jen. Okay, lastly, somebody give me a goodwill question.
I think building on what Jen just said about, knowing who your stakeholders are and how you want to involve them, and how they're going to be impacted. I think a great will question then would be, how will you check in and adjust?
Perfect, especially with all those stakeholders in a new system. Because new means you're going to take 2 steps forward, 1 step backwards, 3 steps sideways, and pretty soon you're doing the 2-step or 3-step or whatever that dance is. Maybe line dancing, I don't know. I haven't done it. Thank you, Joyce. Perfect. So you guys are good participants here. So now it's time to take this to a deeper level. I'm going to do the setup, and then Pat is going to put you into groups of 3. This is random. I cleared this with Joyce. We don't know who's going to be with who. We'll leave it to the Zoom master who wrote the software. I want you to go back and pick that competency that you wrote down that you would like to improve. Emotional intelligence, strategic agility, managing ambiguity, influencing others. You should have the slide in front of you that has the definition of each of those. A lot of you picked influencing. I'd like you to share which one. Ask the other 2 people in your group to be your coach. And the coaches should ask you one question that would help you clarify the goal, confirm the reality, create options, or make the commitments to what you will do. I'm going to suggest that you ask them for one question and then write the question down and say thank you. We're not going to have a time for a lot of back and forth and what we call active coaching, but just being asked a question can help people clarify, confirm, create, and commit. So everybody rotate so that each person has a chance to offer what they want to get better at, get 2 questions. If you have time to do 2 questions, please do so. Pat and I are going to keep an eye on the clock, pull you all back into the big group, and probably about 12 to 15 minutes, we may pop into a few groups and see how they're doing. Any questions before we do the breakout?
Richard, can you say again, because it might have just cut out, but how long will the breakout be total?
We're going to say 12 to 15 minutes. We may keep it to 12. If we see there's a lot of conversation, may let it go 15.
So each person should have about 4 minutes or so to get going.
Yeah, okay. 3 to 4 minutes. And Joyce, I think you and I talked about a hard stop at 1 o'clock. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So Pat's going to launch the breakout.
Yeah, so the way I've set it up is there are 14 minutes and then a 60-second countdown, and it's all random. There should be 3 to 4 people in each group from what I could tell. So, so we'll see how this goes.
Thank you.
So you've all been invited to join a room.
Yes, we had plenty of time to discuss, and we had both influencing others.
Very good.
So, yeah, we shared a
I,
lot.
yeah, I have some added Richard words of wisdom that I'm going to share that actually relate to influencing others. So I may have unknowingly teed up the closing section that fits well. So thank you, Mariana.
Recorded.
Okay, Pat, are we all back now?
I believe so.
Okay, according to my clock, we got 13 minutes, so I'm moving toward a close. But let me ask one group to share a question or an insight that you got from the breakout room. Any volunteers?
I can go. I don't mind. Again, influencing others is what I picked. And when I was talking to Variama, my question was, we have this program called Tech Cred. It's a state program. It offers free training dollars. And so anyhow, I'm trying to influence others to take advantage of this opportunity. And I've sent out emails, and I've had few people take advantage of it, but not as much as I expected. And so my question to Marianne was, how can I get folks to take advantage of this opportunity? And she gave me some good advice. Give some reasons, I guess, why people should take the opportunity, take advantage of it. Explain the importance of the courses, the classes, what you can get out of them. Think of, be career minded, I guess. How can these classes help you further your career, down the road? Those are kind of some of the comments that she had made. So.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Granville. And I love that last one, tying it into development. Yeah, how will it help me get better and help me get better for the organization? Very good. Now I'm gonna keep moving because there is a couple of things I want to do as a close, and then we can come back to any general questions. I hope people found the exercise worthwhile, and I'm going to make the closing point on this slide. We can all be coaches for each other. So if we're working on something, we feel stuck, we want a new idea, go ask somebody to ask you a question, or pull that out for yourself and ask yourself some of those questions. So with Joyce's permission, I told her that I just can't help being Richard Needles, and I want to add a couple of lessons that I have learned that are common activities that help people in the workplace. So I'm calling this some added lessons learned. This is not following the question format, but if you want, this is wisdom from the bald guy. I was coaching a senior executive with one of the significant banks, and the woman I was coaching said, every time I walk into a meeting, I get surprised. And there's something on the agenda that I get into it with one of my colleagues about. And I asked her, how often do you practice the meeting before the meeting? And I think this is a hidden jewel to get over some conflicts, some tensions, and a better way to influence people before the big meeting. And in all the research, it's called the meeting before the meeting, the call before the meeting. And I actually worked with this leader, and I have a voicemail on my phone. She left me 2 years ago. I am never deleting that voicemail. After our work, she called me and said, Richard, guess who just got promoted? She got the big promotion. And she said, it's because I did the meeting before the meeting. And here's how it works. Before you have the big meeting next week, you reach out to one or two people who are really important to you in that meeting. I call it pre-Zoom before you presume, or in the case of my clients who use Microsoft Team, team before you team. You reach out to that person and you ask that person, what do you need most from me in that big meeting next week? What does your team need most from me? And then you say, here's what I need from you. Here's what I need from your team. How can we do both? How can I help you? And how can you help me? Literally, when people do this, they feel less pressure because they're not surrounded with 10 other people around a big conference room, or they're not in a team session or a Zoom session. They're one-on-one. It's a lot easier to ask, what's important to you? Here's what's important to me. So I just wanted little Richard words of wisdom. If you're not practicing the meeting before the meeting, I'm going to suggest maybe direct coaching, not asking questions to get you there. It's something that I think a lot more people should try in the workplace. Any comments or questions about that before I do the closing slides? Okay, the last few things I'm going to leave with you is I believe that no matter your role, no matter your title, no matter your level, each person in the organization should be able to recognize their dominant style and to flex into other styles. You're never going to be perfect at the styles that are not your dominant style, but everyone can get a little bit better. And I want to suggest that if you look around the organization, in order for work to be most productive, there's often a builder, a persuader, a visionary, and an organizer. And again, it's not a perfect alignment with this, but it's close. That if you're a high D, you're going to be attracted to the builder. So recognize, who do I need to persuade? How is what I'm trying to do tied to our future, our mission, our purpose? How are we going to do it? What are those first few steps? If you're an organizer, a high C, you really need to ask, who do I need to persuade? Who do I need to influence? Who do I need to do the meeting before the meeting? I put this slide in front of you, and again, many of my clients have this at their workstation. They use it in team meetings, and you can literally take the who, what, how, and why, use it in meetings, use it in roles, and get something that is more complete. So quick refresh. We've looked at the what, who, why, and how. We've looked at the GROW model. Everybody's got these things in front of them. Final factors for success. If you're an individual who wants to get better at something, these are the factors for success. You have to really want it. You have to be open to listen to stakeholder voices. What are people telling you? You do need to recognize and leverage your strengths, and you got to commit to doing the work. If you're someone in the organization and someone comes to you and says, could you be my coach? Would you help coach me a bit? You want to use a supportive and challenging style. It's what I do every day in my work. And if you can be a partner on the journey, it is joyful to watch someone be getting a little bit better. You can probably see my face lighten up. I'm thinking of those 170 people that I have helped, and it's just joyful to be a partner in their journey. So I'm going to close with a couple of quotes from one of my favorite athletes. Many people in this group are probably way too young to remember or know about Bill Russell. Well before LeBron James and the current NBA stars, there was this guy named Bill Russell. He was the center for the Boston Celtics, and his record is absolutely unmatched. What I like about Bill Russell was he managed to get old and actually keep a great head of hair. He also figured out how to stay tall. Of course, he started at 6'9", but you know, he stayed tall. What I really admire about him, his entire life was built around teams. He was never the scoring champion in the NBA, but he was great on defense, great at setting up team plays. And here are a couple of his quotes. Success is the result of consistent practice of winning skills. There's nothing miraculous about the process. There's no luck involved. Another quote, the most important measure of how good a game I played was how much better I made my teammates play. In today's workplace, no matter our role, we are all leaders. We all need to be great team members. So we got it, looks like a minute and a half left. Jump into the chat. If you wouldn't mind, just tell me one idea that you will take away from today's session. Hopefully we helped a little bit on people's personal, professional development. It would be satisfying for me to see one little thing pop into chat.
Where I need silence.
And then I'll throw it open to any questions, comments, any closing remarks.
Richard, while people are doing that, I did put a comment in the chat or a question for you that came up during our breakout that I thought was sort of like, you know,
Okay.
expanded my thinking around it. So I don't know if you want to.
Yeah. Let me, was it from you, Millie?
I could read it for you. I'll read it for you, Richard. She says, we had a great conversation in our breakout, and it was brought up that influencing others is probably another way of seeing our overall communication issues as a company. I'm wondering if this is something you often see as a predominant personal improvement in other companies.
Yes, and Millie, I'll connect it back to the meeting before the meeting. I will also share that I have a one-pager on how you get better at influence. And you'll be shocked at this. Millie, I can see your face on my screen right now. It's all questions. But I would be glad to send that to Joyce and share with the group. I'm going to stop sharing my
But do you see
so I can see everybody's faces? Yeah.
You see other companies with over 50% of the people wanting that as their skill to improve, or is that normal? I guess.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The to quote young Frankenstein, there's nothing abnormal about this organization. The Millie, I'll expand on that by saying many organizations say what we have here is a failure to communicate. To quote another movie line, communications. Some people call it influencing, some people call it communication. It's probably the most common issue. And it's no surprise. You know, we are organized functionally. You know, we are all moving at 100 miles an hour. We don't take the time. When we do take the time up front, you save a lot of grief on the back end. But very, very common, influencing communication.
I will also say, if I could add one thing, Richard, I will also say, Millie, that's one of the reasons why tools like DISC, I think, are so critical to success within an organization, because understanding how I'm similar or different from those I'm communicating with and where my strengths are and how I need to pivot to meet other people where they're at, I think is ultimately critical for successful communication and collaboration.
I really like the DISC model. It was really helpful when we did that. So thank you for all the comments.
Yeah, thank you. Any other, I'll ask Joyce maybe to do a closing comment, but before we, any other questions? I'm jumping into chat now and seeing what people are commenting. Thank you for the comments.
I would just say, well, first of all, thank you, Richard and Pat. This was really helpful. I think, you know, if everyone got as much out of the breakout as I did, you know, I think the questions were really powerful, and it's easy to get stuck in the pattern and not even be asking the questions on, you know, to get to resolution or to grow. And but I also wanted to let everyone know here that I will be sending out the entire deck after the call concludes today. So you'll have all the slides instead of just the 8 that I sent this morning. Additionally, I will send out the recording, a link to the recording for all those that were on the call today, as well as for those who were unable to join us, so that everyone has access.
Yeah, thank you, Joyce. And I jumped back into the chat, the constructive criticism comment. I think the tone there was, it's always better if it's positive. And I agree wholeheartedly. I did see a recent article that said tone of voice is the #1 reason why communications go astray.
Richard, do you think, you know, building on that, saying tone of voice, a lot of times communications come across through email or text messages where tone is somewhat interpreted. And do you think that's part of the issue as well?
Yeah, great question, buddy. And I actually have a slide Joyce, I don't want to do a commercial here about people following me on LinkedIn, but I put out a slide a few months ago on the 3 elements of effective communication: visual, verbal, vocal. And verbal is the words you choose, literally the words. Vocal, of course, is tone, volume, pace. Visual, can I see? Am I smiling right now or am I frowning? So effective communication has all 3 elements, and in email, you only get 1. You get the words on the screen. You don't see if I'm smiling or frowning. You don't get my tone of voice. So I have actually coached a couple of my executives to double down on a soft, warm opening, the content, and a nice warm close whenever you're writing an email. And Pat will probably smile when I say this. Every email I send, and Joyce and I have been exchanging a few emails in the last few weeks. Every email I sent one today to Joyce that said, check in. Hi, Joyce, happy Tuesday. I start every email with happy Monday, happy Tuesday, happy Wednesday, happy Thursday. It can't hurt. And it hopefully sends a tone of positivity right from the start. Now that was preaching. I should have been asking you guys questions to get you to that answer.
Well, thank you again, Richard. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Pat. We're really grateful to have had you guys here today. I know everyone has calls that they have to jump to or meetings, but like I said, we really appreciate your time, and I think everyone's gotten a lot from today. So thank you again.
Okay, very good. Happy Tuesday.
Thank you.